Hello and welcome to Tale Talk English. Today's story is inspiring, emotional, and full of hope. It is about losing everything you thought was safe. It will also help you improve your English listening and vocabulary through simple conversations and real-life emotions. As you listen, pay attention to the simple vocabulary, natural conversations, and useful English expressions. They will help you improve your listening and speaking skills. Now, let's begin today's story. I still remember the exact morning when my life began to change. At that time, I had no idea that one ordinary Monday would completely change my future. My name is William. Back then, my life was simple. Every day looked almost the same. I worked as an assistant manager in a small office downtown. The salary was not amazing, but it paid my bills. I rented a small apartment, bought simple food, and lived a quiet life. I believed that was enough. Every weekday, I woke up at 7 o'clock. I drank a quick cup of coffee, got dressed, and hurried to work. Nothing exciting ever happened. I thought my future was already planned. I was wrong. That Monday morning, the sky was gray. Dark clouds covered the city, and the air felt cold and heavy. I arrived at work 5 minutes late. Normally, nobody cared, but that day was different. As soon as I entered the building, I saw my boss standing near the entrance. His name was Mr. Reynolds. He looked serious, even more serious than usual. "William," he said quietly, "please come to my office." Something felt wrong. I followed him without saying a word. When we entered his office, he closed the door behind us. He sat down and looked at me for a few seconds. Then he sighed. "We're making some changes in the company." I waited. "I'm sorry," he continued. "Your position has been removed." For a moment, I couldn't understand what he meant. "My position?" I asked. He nodded. "We have to reduce our staff. It isn't personal, but today will be your last day." The room suddenly felt very quiet. "I don't understand," I whispered. "I've worked here for 6 years." "I know," he replied kindly. "You've always worked hard. This decision wasn't easy, but the company has no choice." I looked down at my hands. They were shaking. I wanted to say something. I wanted to ask him to change his mind, but deep inside, I already knew it was over. After signing a few papers, I slowly walked back to my desk. Nobody knew what had happened. My coworkers smiled at me like it was a normal day. I forced myself to smile back. Then I quietly packed my things into a small cardboard box. A family photo, a coffee mug, some notebooks, a pen. That was all. 6 years of work packed into one small box. When I walked out of the building, nobody stopped me. The city looked exactly the same. People were laughing, cars filled the streets, buses passed by. Life continued, but my life felt frozen. I didn't want to go home. I wasn't ready to sit alone in my apartment, so I started walking. I didn't know where I was going. I just kept moving. As I walked, one question repeated itself inside my head. Why me? I worked hard. I arrived early almost every day. I never caused problems. I followed every rule. So why had I lost everything? Hours passed. Finally, I reached a quiet park. The trees moved gently in the wind. Orange leaves slowly fell onto the grass. Children were playing nearby. Birds sang softly. Everything felt peaceful. Everything except my mind. I sat down on an old wooden bench. For several minutes, I simply stared at the ground. Then I noticed someone else sitting at the other end of the bench, an elderly man. He wore an old brown jacket and held a small notebook in his hands. He wasn't writing, he was just watching the people around him. After a few minutes, he spoke. "Bad day?" I looked at him surprised. "Is it that obvious?" A small smile appeared on his face. "Only to someone who has lived through many bad days." His voice was calm, warm, comforting. For some reason, I didn't mind talking to him. "I lost my job today," I admitted. He nodded slowly. "And now," he said, "you think your life is falling apart." I looked at him. "Yes, it feels like everything is over." He closed his notebook. Then he looked directly into my eyes. "No," he said, "it's just beginning." I almost laughed. "Beginning? I just lost my only job. I don't have much money. I don't know what I'll do next." He listened carefully. Then he smiled again. "Good." I frowned. "Good? How can this possibly be good?" He leaned back against the bench. "Because now," he said slowly, "you have something many people never have." I waited. "You have the chance to choose a different life." I shook my head. "I don't feel lucky. I feel terrified." "Of course you do," he replied. "Fear is natural. It appears whenever we stand in front of something new." I looked away. "I don't even know what I'm good at." He stayed silent for a moment. Then he asked, "What have you been doing for the last 6 years?" "I organized work," I replied. "I answered emails. I solved small problems. I helped customers. I managed schedules." He smiled. "So you do know many things." "I guess," I replied, "but those are ordinary skills. There is nothing special about them." The old man laughed softly. "Do you know what the world needs most?" I shook my head. "People who can solve ordinary problems." His answer surprised me. He continued, "Most people spend their lives waiting. They wait until they feel ready. They wait until life becomes safe. They wait until someone gives them permission. And while they wait, they never begin." His words stayed in my mind. I had been waiting too, waiting for the perfect time, waiting until I had more money, waiting until I felt confident. Maybe I had been waiting for years. "What if I fail?" I asked quietly. He looked at the trees before answering. "What if you don't?" I stared at him. Nobody had ever asked me that question before. All day I had been asking myself, what if everything goes wrong? But I had never asked, what if something goes right? The sun slowly began to disappear behind the trees. The sky turned orange and pink. For the first time since morning, my breathing became slower. The fear was still there, but it wasn't as strong. The old man stood up. He placed his notebook inside his jacket. "So," I asked, "what should I do now?" He smiled one last time. "Take the next step." I looked confused. "That's all?" "Yes," he replied. "You don't need to see the whole road. You only need to see the next step." Then he turned around and slowly walked away. Within a minute, he disappeared behind the trees. I stayed on the bench for a long time, thinking. His advice sounded simple, maybe too simple, but somehow it made sense. That evening, I returned to my apartment carrying nothing but my small box from the office. The rooms felt quieter than ever before. I placed the box on the table and sat on the edge of my bed. Everything had changed. I had no job, no plan, no idea what tomorrow would bring. But deep inside me, a tiny voice whispered something new. Maybe this wasn't the end. maybe this was the beginning. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the same moments again. Mr. Reynolds telling me that my job was gone, my coworkers smiling without knowing it was my last day, the old man in the park, his calm voice echoed in my mind. You don't need to see the whole road, you only need to see the next step. I wanted to believe him, but it wasn't easy. Fear is loud. Hope is quiet. The next morning, I woke up at 7 o'clock out of habit. For a few seconds, everything felt normal. Then I remembered. I had nowhere to go, no office, no meetings, no work. The apartment felt strangely silent. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat by the window. People outside were rushing to work, just like I used to do. For a moment, I felt jealous. They had a purpose. I felt lost. I picked up my phone and almost opened a job website. Then I stopped. The old man's words returned. Choose a different life. I walked to my desk and found an empty notebook. I opened the first page. For several minutes, I couldn't think of anything to write. Finally, I wrote one sentence. Things I can do. It looked simple, almost childish. Still, I kept writing. I can organize work. I can answer emails. I can communicate politely. I can solve small problems. I can help customers. I can stay calm under pressure. I can learn quickly. When I finished, I looked at the list. None of these skills seemed amazing, but together they told a different story. Maybe I wasn't starting from nothing. Maybe I already had something valuable. That thought gave me a little confidence. Not much, just enough to keep moving. Later that afternoon, I opened my laptop. I searched for office jobs. There were many. Most looked exactly like my old one. Assistant manager, office administrator, customer support. The salaries were almost the same. The responsibilities were almost the same. I imagined myself working there. Another office, another desk, another routine, another 6 years. Suddenly, I closed the laptop. My heart felt heavy. Was that really what I wanted, or was I simply afraid to try something different? I didn't know the answer. That afternoon, I returned to the same park. Part of me hoped the old man would be there. I wanted more advice, more answers. When I arrived, the bench was empty. I sat down anyway. People walked past me, children laughed, dogs chased balls across the grass. An hour passed. The old man never came. At first, I felt disappointed. Then I smiled. Maybe this was another lesson. Maybe I wasn't supposed to depend on him. Maybe I had to make my own decisions now. As I stood up to leave, I made a promise to myself. Today, I will do something different. When I returned home, I opened my laptop again. But this time, I didn't search for jobs. Instead, I opened a social media website. My fingers rested on the keyboard. I hesitated. Then I began typing. Hello, everyone. My name is William. I have several years of experience organizing work, answering customer messages, managing emails, and helping businesses stay organized. If any small business owner needs reliable support, I'd be happy to help. I read the message 3 times. It sounded simple, maybe too simple. I almost deleted it. Who would hire a stranger? Who would trust me? The voice of doubt became louder. You're not experienced enough. Nobody will answer. You'll embarrass yourself. My finger moved toward the delete button. Then I remembered one question. What if you don't fail? I took a deep breath. Before fear could stop me again, I clicked post. The message was online. There was no turning back. My heart started beating fast. For the next hour, I kept checking my phone. Nothing. No likes, no comments, no messages. The silence felt painful. That evening, I convinced myself it had been a mistake. I should have looked for another office job. That would have been smarter, safer, more realistic. The next morning, I reached for my phone. I planned to delete the post, but before I could, a notification appeared. One new message. My hands froze. I opened it slowly. "Hello, William. I saw your post. My name is Olivia. I own a small online shop that sells handmade gifts. I'm struggling to answer customer messages every day. Would you be interested in helping me?" I couldn't believe it. I read the message again, then again. Someone actually needed my help. It wasn't a huge company. It wasn't a dream job, but it was real. For the first time since losing my job, a door had opened. Still, fear returned immediately. What if she expects too much? What if I make mistakes? What if she realizes I'm not good enough? I stared at the screen for almost 5 minutes. Then I smiled. I finally understood something. Fear wasn't disappearing. It was simply coming with me, and that was okay. I began typing. "Hello, Olivia. Thank you for your message. Yes, I'd be happy to help. Could you tell me more about your business and what you need?" I pressed send. A strange feeling filled my chest, part excitement, part fear, part hope. A few minutes later, Olivia replied. She explained that her business had grown quickly. She loved making handmade products, but answering hundreds of customer questions every week was becoming impossible. She needed someone organized, someone patient, someone polite. She asked if we could have a video call that afternoon. I agreed immediately. The hours before the meeting felt endless. I changed my shirt 3 times. I checked my internet connection 5 times. I practiced introducing myself. I even cleaned the room behind my desk so it would look professional. When the video call finally started, I was nervous. Olivia smiled warmly. She looked friendly. "Thank you for meeting with me," she said. "Thank you for giving me the opportunity," I replied. We talked for almost 40 minutes. She explained her business. I explained my experience. At the end of the conversation, she smiled again. "I'd like to give you a chance. We can start with 1 week. If everything goes well, we'll continue." 1 week. That was all, but it was enough. After the call ended, I leaned back in my chair. Only 2 days earlier, I believed my future had ended. Now, a completely different future was beginning. I still didn't know where this new road would lead, but for the first time in many years, I wasn't standing still anymore. I was moving forward, one small step at a time. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. This time, I didn't wake up because I had to go to work. I woke up because I was excited. Then the nervous feeling returned. This was my first day working with Olivia. I wanted to do everything well. After breakfast, I turned on my laptop and opened my notebook. I had written down every detail from our conversation. I wanted to be prepared. A few minutes later, Olivia sent me access to her business email. Almost immediately, I understood why she needed help. There were hundreds of unread messages. Some customers wanted to know when their orders would arrive. Others wanted to change their shipping address. A few had questions about products. I took a deep breath. "This is a lot," I whispered. Instead of feeling overwhelmed, I remembered something Mr. Harrison had said. You only need to see the next step. So I didn't think about the hundreds of messages. I focused on the first one, then the second, then the third. Hour by hour, the list became shorter. I answered every customer politely. When I wasn't sure what to write, I read the message carefully before replying. Sometimes I had to ask Olivia for advice. She always answered kindly. "Don't worry," she told me, "you're learning." Those words gave me confidence. The first few days were not perfect. I made mistakes. Once I sent the wrong tracking number to a customer. Another time, I forgot to reply to an important email until the next morning. When I noticed my mistakes, I felt embarrassed. The old fear returned. Maybe I wasn't good enough. Maybe this opportunity would disappear. But instead of giving up, I apologized, corrected my mistakes, and kept working. Each mistake became a lesson. Little by little, I became faster. I learned how Olivia liked to communicate with customers. I noticed which answers solved problems quickly. I created simple folders to organize emails. I made lists of common questions so I could answer them faster. Every day, I improved a little. At the end of the fourth day, my phone rang. It was Olivia. For a second, I became nervous. Had I done something wrong? I answered the call. "Hi, William," she said happily. "I just wanted to thank you." I smiled. "For what?" "Our customers are happier," she replied. "They're receiving faster replies, and I finally have enough time to focus on making new products." For a moment, I couldn't speak. Nobody had thanked me like that in a long time. She continued, "I've noticed how carefully you work. It really makes a difference." After the call ended, I sat quietly in my chair. A real smile appeared on my face. Not the polite smile I used in the office, not the fake smile I showed when I wanted to hide my feelings. This smile was different. I had earned it. At the end of the week, Olivia scheduled another video meeting. I wondered what she wanted to discuss. When the call began, she looked cheerful. "William," she said, "our one-week trial is over." I nodded. "I know, I've made some mistakes." She laughed softly. "Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is that you learned from them." Then she said something I will never forget. "I'd like you to stay, not for another week. I'd like to work with you long term." For a second, I couldn't believe what I had heard. "You really mean that?" She smiled. "Absolutely. You've helped my business more than you realize." Without thinking, I answered, "Yes, I'd love to continue." After the meeting, I looked out the window. Only a few weeks earlier, I had walked out of an office carrying a small cardboard box. I thought my future had disappeared. Now I had a new beginning. But life had one more surprise waiting for me. A few days later, Olivia recommended me to a friend who owned a small clothing store online. Soon after that, another business owner contacted me, then another. Slowly, my work began to grow. Instead of working for one company, I was helping several small businesses. Every client taught me something new. One taught me better communication, another taught me organization, another showed me how important trust is. Of course, not every day was easy. Some customers were impatient, some problems were difficult to solve. Sometimes I still doubted myself. Sometimes I still felt afraid. But now I understood something important. Fear wasn't a sign to stop, it was a sign that I was growing. Months passed. I built a new daily routine, but this routine was different from my old one. I chose my working hours. I decided how to organize my day. I learned new skills every week. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was building something that belonged to me. One quiet evening after finishing my work, I decided to visit the park again. The same park, the same path, the same old bench. I sat down and looked around. I hoped to see Mr. Harrison, but he wasn't there. I waited for a while. Still nothing. Then I smiled. Maybe I wasn't supposed to see him again. Maybe he had already given me everything I needed. He never gave me money. He never offered me a job. He never solved my problems. He simply changed the way I looked at them. As I watched the sun slowly disappear behind the trees, I remembered his words. You don't need to see the whole road. You only need to see the next step. Now I finally understood what he meant. When I lost my job, I believed my story was ending. In reality, it was only the first chapter of a better life. If I had stayed comfortable, I would never have discovered what I was capable of. If I had chosen safety over courage, I would never have grown. And if I had allowed fear to control me, I would still be waiting for the perfect moment. Life rarely changes because of one huge decision. Most of the time, it changes because of one small choice, one message, one conversation, one opportunity, one simple word: yes. If you are listening to my story today, maybe you're facing your own difficult moment. Maybe you lost a job. Maybe you feel stuck. Maybe you're afraid of the future. If that's true, I want you to remember something. You don't need to know every answer. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need to feel fearless. You only need the courage to take one small step, because one step becomes another and another. Before you realize it, you may be walking towards a life you never imagined. Sometimes the worst day of your life becomes the first day of your best future. It happened to me. Maybe one day it will happen to you too. Thank you for listening to today's story. If you enjoyed this video and want to improve your English through simple, natural, and inspiring stories, don't forget to support Tale Talk English. Subscribe for more easy English stories, listening practice, useful vocabulary, and real-life lessons. Keep learning, keep improving, and most importantly, keep taking the next step. See you in the next story.